There's something about the way you experience the world that you've probably never fully noticed. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Everything you call reality, everything you think is just happening out there independently, has actually been filtered through your mind before it even reaches your conscious awareness. Think about that for a second. You've never experienced raw, unfiltered reality, not once in your entire life. Modern neuroscience is just now catching up to what the Buddha figured out 2,500 years ago. Every single thing you perceive, every sight, every sound, every sensation, gets shaped by your brain's expectations before you're even aware it's happening. Your mind is constantly interpreting, editing, and coloring everything that comes in. But here's why this matters. The Buddha wasn't interested in this as some cool philosophical fact. He was obsessed with one thing: liberation, freedom from suffering. And understanding how perception actually works is where that freedom begins. So let me show you something that's happening to you right now, in this very moment, that you're probably completely unaware of. Pay attention to what happens when you meet someone new for the first time. Before you've consciously decided anything about them, before any logical thought forms in your head, you already know something. They feel safe, or they feel slightly dangerous. They feel familiar, or they feel like someone you should keep your distance from. Whatever the verdict is, it arrived before you even realized you were making a judgment. You didn't look at them and then decide. The decision was already inside the looking itself. This is wild when you really think about it. Your mind is doing this constantly, every second of every day, in every direction, naming what appears in front of you, comparing it to memories, predicting what comes next, assigning meaning to everything, attaching feelings to it all, and it happens so fast that your normal everyday awareness can't even follow it. By the time an experience becomes conscious, by the time you're aware you're experiencing something, it has already been completely shaped and filtered. The light has already been colored, the face has already been read and categorized, the sound has already been turned into words with meaning, your body has already taken a position, tensed or relaxed. We like to imagine our mind is like a clear mirror, just perfectly reflecting whatever's in front of it. But that's not how it works at all. A way more accurate image is this. Your mind is a workshop that literally never closes, not even when you sleep. It's constantly shaping, sorting, editing, framing every single experience, every second you're awake, and even continuing through your dreams at night. Sit with this for a moment. Really let it sink in. Your mind is editing every experience before it becomes conscious. Whatever you call reality has always arrived through this editing process. There is no version of reality that has ever come to you any other way. There's no pure, unfiltered channel. Once you actually see this, reality stops being something that exists purely outside of you, that you're just passively observing. Reality is something you meet within the field of your own seeing, hearing, sensing, feeling, and thinking. And this is the exact field where suffering begins. But it's also the exact same field where freedom becomes possible. Comment below and let me know what time it is where you are right now and where in the world you're watching this from. I love knowing this wisdom is reaching people everywhere. Now, back in the time the Buddha was alive, in ancient India, around the 5th century BCE, this question about the nature of reality wasn't some obscure topic only philosophers cared about. It was everywhere. It dominated public conversation the same way questions about science and consciousness and the universe dominate conversations today. Wandering spiritual teachers would debate openly in the streets about what's actually real and what's not real, whether there's one underlying substance to everything or many substances, whether the world is eternal or whether it comes and goes in cycles. These questions filled the public life of northern India. And in one of his talks, recorded in the early Buddhist texts as the Sabha Sutta, the Buddha addressed this question head-on. Someone asked him, "What is the all? What is everything that can actually be talked about?" And his answer completely flipped the question around. Instead of giving some grand metaphysical theory about the nature of the universe, he drew a very careful boundary. He said the all is the eye and the forms it sees. It's the ear and the sounds it hears. It's the nose and the smells, the tongue and the tastes. the body and what it physically touches, and the mind and all the thoughts and impressions that arise within it. This, he said, is the all. This is everything. And then he said something really important. If anyone claims there's another all beyond this field of direct experience, and you ask them to point to the actual basis of that claim, they won't be able to do it. They'll only be able to repeat words. They'll only have concepts and theories. Now we need to be really clear about what this teaching is saying and what it's not saying. The Buddha was not denying that an external physical world exists. He wasn't saying nothing exists beyond your personal mind. That would be solipsism, and that's not what he taught. The careful point he was making is way more practical than that. Whatever can be honestly investigated by you appears within your experience. Whatever can be clung to, whatever can cause you suffering, whatever can be released, whatever can lead to awakening, it all appears here in this field. Anything claimed to exist beyond that field might be interesting to speculate about, but it can't be the place where you directly understand and release suffering. You can't work with something you can't access. So from this point forward, when we talk about reality, we mean something very specific. We mean the living field of experience appearing right now through your senses, through your feelings, through your thoughts. This is the only reality any of us actually directly encounters. The world out there may or may not be exactly how we picture it. The Buddha basically says that's beside the point for our purposes. He brings our attention back to what we can actually examine firsthand, which is the experience arising in this present moment and the way it gives rise to either suffering or freedom. Reality in this practical sense isn't some abstract puzzle to solve from a distance while sitting in an armchair. It's the living dynamic field where contact happens, where feeling arises, where perception forms, where craving starts, where resistance builds, and where release becomes possible. Suffering begins inside this field through movements that are so fast and so familiar that they usually pass completely unseen. Let me give you a small, everyday example that'll make this crystal clear. Imagine this. You pick up your phone. You see that someone you care about, someone you love, has read your message, but they haven't replied. And within just a few seconds, something has happened inside you. You're no longer just a person standing there holding a phone. Watch what actually occurs here, step by step, if we slow it way down. First, there's the simple physical contact of your eye meeting the screen. Light enters your eye. An image forms on your retina. Then your mind recognizes what's being seen. It applies a label to it. It gives it context. Read but not answered. Up to this exact point, nothing especially painful has actually happened yet. It's just neutral information, just data. But almost immediately, something else arises in your body. An unpleasant feeling, a sense of unease, a tightening somewhere, maybe in your chest or your stomach. Notice there's still no story yet at this point, just a tone, a feeling quality. And then, in the very next fraction of a second, your mind reaches toward this unpleasant tone and begins to build meaning around it. Why isn't she answering? Did I say something wrong? Is something going on with him? Does he not care about me anymore? Am I being ignored? Memory rushes in, imagined futures flood in, and by now there's no longer just a phone in your hand with some words on a screen. There's a whole private movie playing in your mind, and the entire scene has become a story about being hurt, being ignored, being abandoned, being rejected. And here's the thing, you can't quite remember exactly when this film started playing. It happened so fast. Now here's what's really fascinating. The same exact event doesn't create the same world in everyone who experiences it. One person sees that unread message and feels only mild curiosity. Another person feels complete panic. Another feels anger rising. Another feels deep shame. The screen is identical, the message is identical, the external facts are the same, but the conditions meeting that moment are completely different in each person. The memory each person brings is different. Their personal history is different. Their fears are different. Their hopes are different. The mind meets the present moment together with absolutely everything it has learned to expect based on the past. the Buddha described this pattern with remarkable precision and clarity. In his teaching on dependent arising, he traced out the chain in compressed form. Contact gives rise to feeling. Feeling gives rise to craving. Craving gives rise to clinging. Clinging gives rise to becoming, to identification, and from there to all the sorrow and grief and despair that follow. Contact, feeling, craving. Those three words reveal the central turning point where a plain neutral moment begins to transform into a moment of suffering. It's worth pausing here to clarify what the Buddha meant by feeling in this specific teaching because it's quite different from how we usually use that word today. When we say feeling now, we usually mean complex emotional states, jealousy, despair, rage, longing, anxiety, joy. But the Buddha was pointing to something way more primitive and immediate that sits underneath all of those complex emotions. Just a bare tone, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That's it. Nothing more complicated than that. When your eye met that phone screen and saw read but no reply, the first feeling wasn't, "I'm being abandoned." That's the complex emotional story that came later. The first feeling was just unpleasant, a subtle aversive tone in your experience. But then watch what happens. Beneath the story level, something deeper is occurring. Your mind isn't only interpreting the experience, it's actively trying to secure it, to control it. It wants the pleasant experiences to stay and continue. It wants the unpleasant experiences to leave immediately. It wants uncertain experiences to become certain so it can relax. It wants the constantly moving field of life to freeze into something solid it can finally hold on to. This is exactly why a simple feeling tone becomes craving. The bare feeling itself is actually innocent. It's just information, but the leaning toward or away from it changes everything. Pleasant becomes keep this, don't let it end. Unpleasant becomes remove this right now, make it stop. Uncertain becomes solve this immediately, I need to know. And in that leaning, that grasping or pushing, experience begins to tighten up. It starts to contract. Even the neutral tone matters here. When an experience is neither pleasant nor painful, the mind very often labels it as boring. The hand automatically reaches for the phone to check something. Attention starts looking for a problem to solve. The mind searches desperately for something to want, something to fear, something to become busy with. In this way, even neutral feelings can become a doorway into suffering and craving because the natural stillness of the present moment hasn't been trusted yet. The mind can't rest in it. In another teaching, the Buddha described the same movement from a slightly different angle. He said contact gives rise to feeling. What is felt is then perceived. What is perceived gets thought about, and what is thought about can spread outward into elaborate mental stories and proliferation. That's the exact sequence of the phone message moment we just walked through, written in the language of 2,500 years ago. Now here's the most important point for actual practice. Awareness can enter anywhere along this chain, but the most accessible doorway, the easiest place to interrupt the pattern, is often right in the gap between feeling and craving. Right before the unpleasant tone hardens into, "I absolutely need this to be different." Before your body's tension becomes a demand for an answer right now. Before the story has gathered enough momentum and force to carry you away. That's where awareness has the clearest opening, the best chance. After that point, the momentum grows incredibly quickly. It's like a river. Before you even remember there's a river, you're already miles downstream being swept along. And here another crucial point comes into view. The fact that stories are being constantly built in your mind, that's one layer of the problem. But the deeper layer lies underneath that. The story gets taken as reality before it's even recognized as a story. That's the real issue. A feeling arises, and it gets heard as a command from reality itself. An unpleasant tone shows up and instantly becomes, something is wrong, something is broken. A pleasant tone appears and becomes, this must continue forever, or I'll suffer. Uncertainty arises and becomes, I have to know the answer right now, or I can't be okay. This is what ignorance means in the Buddhist sense. It's not stupidity. It's not lack of information. It's something way more subtle. It's the failure to see the conditions clearly enough while they're still in motion, while the process is still happening. To see things as they actually are means to see this movement clearly enough, in real time as it's occurring, so that the chain doesn't have to complete itself in the same old automatic way anymore. You can step out of the current. This is the deeper meaning of what's called seeing reality as it is. The Pali phrase is yatha bhuta. It's a small term, but it carries enormous weight. Yatha means as or, according to, or in the manner of. Bhuta is the past participle of the verb to become. So while yatha bhuta usually gets translated as it is, or as it really is, it actually carries a more dynamic sense, as it has come to be, according to the way it has become, in the manner of its becoming. The standard translation isn't wrong, but what this way of seeing recognizes is that experience itself is in constant motion, things arising according to their specific conditions, things passing away according to their conditions, the whole flow of becoming itself. This distinction really matters because it helps clear up two places where practice can easily get confused or go off track. The first confusion is the idea that there must be some pure perfect reality sitting somewhere beneath all our mental interpretations just waiting to be uncovered, and that the whole work of meditation is basically to peel back the layers of thought like peeling an onion until you finally touch it directly. It's a beautiful romantic image, but within the framework we're exploring here, the emphasis is slightly different. There's no clean original photograph of reality hidden under the dust of conceptual thought. No pristine picture that the mind has been obscuring. Perception was already shaped from the very first instant of contact. The work of practice is to understand the conditioned process by which experience actually arises moment by moment. The second place practice can get unclear is with the image of standing back as some kind of detached observer, calmly watching emotions and thoughts and body sensations pass by like clouds in the sky while you remain untouched. This sounds very wise and observation is genuinely essential to the path, but the difficulty starts when observation becomes another fixed place to stand, another position. A split forms. Here is pure awareness over here, and over there is messy experience. From that split, practice can become distant, dry, separated from actual life. What's actually being pointed to is something simpler and more intimate than that. It's seeing experience clearly as it naturally unfolds without having to step outside of it into some observation tower. The seeing the Buddha pointed toward is not merely knowing intellectually that the mind constructs experience. That knowledge can just become another concept added to the pile of concepts. The seeing he pointed toward is way more alive and immediate. It's seeing the actual process of construction as it's happening right now. The arising, the passing. The way one condition gives rise to the next condition in real time, seen as a living fact in this present moment while the mind is doing exactly what minds do, and in that kind of seeing, something else becomes visible that's really important. Even the feeling of standing apart and watching, even that is part of the same unfolding process. That sense of being the watcher depends on attention, on memory, on contact, on perception, on subtle habits of holding and positioning. It arises, it changes, and it passes away just like everything else in the field of experience. It's not some permanent, unchanging witness standing outside the stream. When this kind of attention gets cultivated and deepens through sustained practice, the three characteristics the Buddha kept pointing to stop being doctrines you're supposed to believe in or philosophical ideas to memorize. They become simply what you're directly seeing in your actual experience. Everything within your field of experience is in motion, constantly arising and passing, never staying still. Nowhere within this conditioned experience can your mind permanently rest its full weight without eventually creating friction and suffering. And nowhere in this whole flowing process is there a fixed, unchanging center, a permanent self holding everything together from behind the scenes. When this seeing matures and stabilizes, something fundamental begins to change in how you relate to life. The stories don't need to be destroyed or eliminated. They simply start to lose some of their hypnotic spell over you. Pleasant experiences are still pleasant, but they no longer seem to promise final completion or permanent satisfaction. Painful experiences are still painful, but they no longer become the entire sky, the whole of reality. Uncertain experiences are still uncertain, but they no longer have to be completely solved and resolved before any peace becomes possible. This kind of disenchantment, and that's the actual Buddhist term for it, isn't the same as indifference. It's not withdrawal from life or becoming cold and numb. It's an awakening from the spell, from the enchantment that every feeling, every thought, every fear, every desire is telling you the complete truth about reality. Freedom in this sense takes on a totally different meaning than we usually think. It becomes a release from being enchanted and hypnotized by experience, rather than an endless struggle to control experience and make it conform to what you want. But if this remains only in the realm of ideas and philosophy, it hasn't really done anything yet. It has to become lived. Its meaning becomes real in the next ordinary moment, when your body suddenly tightens, when a strong emotion rises up, when your mind begins to move in its habitual patterns, and reality has to be met directly with awareness instead of automatically. If this seeing stays only as an intellectual understanding, it hasn't yet reached the actual places where suffering gets built in your daily life. It has to enter the ordinary moments where life really presses on you. A difficult conversation with someone you love, an unanswered text message, a painful memory that won't leave you alone, a body that hurts, a sudden wave of anger or fear or sadness or restlessness. And this is not easy work. The body and mind move incredibly quickly. By the time you remember to look clearly at what's happening, your body may already be completely tight and tense. Your breath may already be shallow. Your face may already be locked in a grimace. And your mind may already be moving rapidly toward defense or blame or control or escape. Emotion doesn't politely wait for awareness to show up and get settled. It enters through the body first. It gathers meaning and momentum. It begins to shape what you see and how you interpret everything before you fully realize what has even happened. So seeing reality as it is doesn't begin by forcing yourself to be calm or peaceful. It begins by honestly admitting what is already here right now. Heat in the body, tightness in your chest, pressure in your throat, the strong impulse to say something, the urge to withdraw and shut down, the desperate need to know, to fix, to defend yourself, or to be understood and validated. These aren't failures of your practice. They are the exact place where practice becomes real instead of theoretical. In that moment of strong emotion, the important shift is actually simple but really difficult to do. Instead of being immediately carried away into the automatic reaction, attention gently turns toward the process itself. What's actually happening in my body right now? What is my mind frantically trying to protect? What is it trying to hold on to, push away, or control? This isn't analysis for its own sake or getting lost in your head. It's a way of seeing the conditions while they're still actively moving and unfolding. When anger is present, for example, the crucial difference isn't between feeling anger and not feeling anger. That's not the point. The difference is between anger is here as a temporary visitor and I have become the anger, I am the anger. In the first one, anger is recognized as part of your experience, one element in the field. In the second, anger has become the entire place from which you're meeting life. It's become your identity in that moment. Seeing clearly doesn't make the heat disappear instantly like magic, but it does prevent the heat from becoming the only truth in the room, the only lens through which everything gets filtered. The exact same principle applies to fear, sadness, longing, or anxiety. The point is never to push them away or to dress them up in pretty spiritual language. The point is to meet them clearly before they harden into an absolute command that must be obeyed. Fear may be asking for safety. Sadness may be asking to simply be felt without judgment. Anxiety may be desperately asking for certainty in a situation where certainty just isn't possible yet. When this is seen clearly, when the asking is recognized, the emotion may very well still remain present. But its authority, its power to completely run your life, begins to weaken and loosen. This is what it actually means to bring the Buddha's teaching into your daily life. The same difficult people remain in your life. The same unfinished problems remain. The same body with all its limitations and pain and aging remains. But something subtle in the way you meet experience has fundamentally changed. What once felt like an absolute order from reality can now be seen as simply a condition that arose. What once seemed to fill your entire field of awareness can now be seen as just one movement passing through a much larger space. And this recognition often comes late, way too late. The harsh words may have already come out of your mouth. The reactive behavior may have already happened. Your mind may have already been swept miles downstream before you even noticed. But that moment of finally noticing, that's not failure. That moment is actually the first time the chain is being seen again. The first moment, awareness has returned. Seeing becomes practice in this very ordinary, unglamorous way. Not by making every single reaction magically disappear forever, but by gradually no longer believing every reaction completely and automatically. A difficult moment can remain genuinely difficult without having to become your entire reality. A painful feeling can be fully felt without becoming the unchanging place from which absolutely everything gets seen and interpreted. This is how the Buddha's teaching finally leaves the level of beautiful words and concepts and becomes an actual living way of meeting your life. The Buddha never promised that reality would become simpler or easier. He never taught that spiritual practice would make the world go quiet and stop challenging you. What he pointed toward was a way of living inside reality with all of its complexity and messiness and uncertainty while no longer being dragged along by it, completely helpless like a piece of driftwood in a flooding river. That's the freedom he kept talking about. That's liberation. Pain still comes. Loss still happens. The mind still moves in its patterns. The world still does what the world does. And yet within all of that, within the full reality of human life, there can be a way of meeting whatever appears without being completely carried away and destroyed by it every single time. And this freedom doesn't live somewhere far away in some special place you have to travel to. It doesn't require you to become a different person or have some dramatic spiritual experience. It begins in the very next moment when you open your eyes and actually look clearly at what's here. If this exploration opened something up in you, if it helped you see even a little more clearly how your mind creates your experience of reality, please like this video and subscribe to Buddhism Focus for more content that brings ancient wisdom into practical modern life. And share this with someone who's struggling right now, someone who might benefit from understanding how their mind works. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is help each other wake up from the dream we didn't know we were having. Thanks for watching.